Bava Batra, Daf Kaf Gimel, Amud Aleph and Amud Beis. The bottom of Amud Aleph and the top of Amud Beis is a journey of discovery, Mרגלית, טובה, היתה, בידי. It was interesting on Hoshana Rabbah night when we got together as a group of Matmonim learners. Various people had different things to say about what the Matmonim mean to them, and one of them was one of our local Talmudic Chachamim, Oren Chaim Taler, who listens every day, is a Talmud, and he said, for me, the Matmonim is the answer of the day. And I use it to answer my big question of the day. And it works every day, and when there isn't a Matmonim, I'm missing the answer of the day. And I thought that was a wonderful insight, and I thought it does the same for me. For me, it's also the answer of the day. And that particular evening on Hoshana Rabbah night, I was presented with the question of the next day of Hoshana Rabbah, and it occupied me the whole of Hoshana Rabbah until I learned this Gemara, and I found the answer of the day. What happened there was another wonderful Talmud Chacham that we now got in Ra'anana. Rabbi Bernstein said to me, for him, when he listens to the Matmonim, it takes a long time before he can figure out where it's going. He doesn't know where I'm going, what's going on, and at the end, everything falls into place. And Rabbi David Lapin said he finds the same. Even after many decades of learning with me, he finds the same experience. And so I spent the whole of Hoshana Rabbah thinking to myself, probably I need to change my method of teaching. And I need to do what the American experts tell you to do. Right, Grant? You've probably heard this a million times. Tell them what you're going to say it, and tell them what you said. And I've always hated that because it's so condescending that you've actually got to tell your audience what you're going to say. Then you kind of say it and then tell them what you said because they're not capable of figuring it out themselves. And I think it's enormously condescending. But I thought to myself, maybe I'm sure if Talmudic Chachamim like these that I've mentioned find that there's a period of time before they understand where it's going, there are probably many people who give up. Many people who listen for a few minutes and say, I don't know where this is going, and they turn it off and switch to something else. So maybe I need to change the method of presentation. That was my question of the day for Hoshana Rabbah. And then I started learning the Daf and the Matmonim for today, and I found the answer. The first indication of the answer is already on Daf Kav Beis, where the Gemara tries to understand the Mishnah and brings 3 attempts to understand the Mishnah, rejects them all, until it gets to the 4th attempt with it, which is Marbar Avashi. So why bring the other 3? Why not bring the Mishnah, ask the question on the wording of the Mishnah, and give the answer, and move on to the next one? It wouldn't take us 7.5 years to finish Shas at the rate of a page a day if the Gemara was structured that way, if it just gave us the answers. But clearly, the Gemara is not about giving us the answers, and the Gemara is not about just giving us pshat in the Mishnah. The Gemara is about teaching us critical thinking. How to take a text and explore all possibilities of what it could mean and get to the one which is most accurate and most appropriate. And that means going through the journey of discovery, which means trying various things, exploring them and rejecting them. That's what discovery is. When you're traveling and you're on a journey of discovery, if you're on a mission, you just go from point A to point B, you do what you need to do. You're on a business trip, you want to get there as quickly as possible, do what you need to do and get home. And that's what you do. But if you're touring, that's not what you do. If you're touring, you take the side roads and you go and you explore. And sometimes you take a wrong road and you have to come back and try again. That's the process of discovery. And that's the process of learning as well. That if, as Rav Horowitz said on Hoshana Rabbah night, if the Gemara is going to go through you, not just you go through the Gemara, then you've got to allow it to go through you. And the way it goes through you is by exploring, adventuring, discovering. And that's a slower process, but we see that's what the Gemara does. And then it became even clearer when at the bottom of Kuf Kav Gimel, we've got the question that Abba Khalifa Kuruya asks Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Those are Amoraim in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Chia bar Abba went to Eretz Yisrael from Bovel, but their Torah was all in Eretz Yisrael. And he asks them the question that if you look in Bereshit, you find that when it mentions how many people came to Mitzrayim, it mentions 70. But if you count up the names, there are only 69. That was his kasha. Now, of course, we all know the answer because this has become a famous piece of Gemara. But at that time, there wasn't an answer for that question. The question was posed to Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Omar le te'oma hieta im Dina, dichtiv ve'et Dina bito. Dina had a twin sister. And therefore they're counted when the names are given, it's only 69, they're not counted as two. But as a whole, they're counted as two. Abba Khalifa Kuruyo rejects that, and he disproves it. He said that can't be the correct answer. To which Rabbi Chia bar Abba replies, and he says to his Talmud, Abba Khalifa Kuruyo, Mרגלית טובה היתה בידי ואתה מבקש לעבדה ממני. I had this beautiful pearl in my property, and you want to destroy it for me? You want me to lose it? Hachi Omer Rabbi Chama bar Chanina. This is how Rabbi Chama bar Chanina explained it. Zu Yochevet. The missing person, the mysterious person, is Yochevet. Shehorata b'derech v'leidata ben achomot. She was conceived on the way to Mitzrayim, but she was born already on the border of Mitzrayim. Shinema she'adat l'lev Mitzrayim, leidata b'Mitzrayim, en horata b'Mitzrayim. That's the piece of Gemara. So the obvious questions on the Gemara is, why didn't he answer correctly the first time? If he knew the answer, why did he offer an answer that Abba Khalifa Kuruyo was going to destroy in any case? Why did he go through this process? He asks a question, Rabbi Chia bar Abba gives an answer, which he knows is not the right answer. Rabbi Abba Khalifa Kuruyo rejects the answer. And then Rabbi Chia bar Abba says, okay, look, if you insist, I was hoping to withhold this from you. I've got this precious pearl, but you're forcing me to share it with you. What does all that mean? Says the Rashbam, Ta'am yakar be'enai kemargelit. I had this beautiful piece of learning that Rabbi Chama bar Chanina taught me. And I was holding it for myself. It was like a pearl shelo hayiti rotzeh legalot. I didn't want to reveal it. So why did you do it at the beginning? He says the Rashbam, in answer to the question of why did you answer incorrectly to start with, is to lead him through the process of learning. He wanted him to ask the question. He wanted him to find the flaw. Just as the Gemara on the previous daf goes through three possible interpretations of the Mishnah and finds a flaw with each one of them, finding the flaw in an argument is a crucial part of critical thinking. That you've got to be able to take an idea and you've got to be able to see where the idea is lacking, where the idea is missing something. And that's what Rabbi Chia bar Abba wanted to do with Abba Khalifa Kuruyo, to give him that opportunity to think it through, ask the question, and then come to the answer. What is la'avda mimeni? You wanted to destroy it from me. Klomar legalotai la'achirim. He says, I know what you're going to do with this. You're going to go and post it on Facebook. You're going to find a Bava Batra group on Facebook and you're going to tell everybody the answer. And I've been holding this secretly. Why would he do that? Says the Rashbam, he was saying this so that Abba Khalifa Kuruyo would appreciate how important and valuable this idea is. And just briefly, we need to understand, because this is something so alien to today's environment and today's generation. Today's environment is just share everything, get all the information out there, just share it all. It's all available, and there's something great about that, the accessibility and the democratization of information, including Torah, that you can get whatever you want to know. You want to know a piece of Kabbalah, you can look it up, you'll get it. You want to know halacha, you'll get it. Whatever you want, you can get texts that haven't been seen, that aren't known, you can get in minutes. It's all available. But one has to understand that with the hyper availability of Torah, there's also a diminishment of value in Torah. And again, this is difficult because it's just so foreign to current thinking. Because, as I say, currently the idea is just get it out. The more people that know, the better. Yes, in one sense, the more people that know, the better. But in another sense, that cheapens the Torah. Torah that if you wanted to hear this particular piece of Torah, you had to go to Yerushalayim and get accepted into Brisk in the days when Brisk only accepted 25 and later 50 Talmudim as a maximum. You had to be one of the 50, and then you could hear something from the Briskerov. Not just look up on the internet and get it on YouTube or do it. That's not the way it used to be. And so the preciousness with which you approach the Torah, this is something I've worked very hard to discover, to find. He wanted there to be discovery, because when you discover something, you treasure what you've discovered. When you're fed it, it's worth nothing to you. And we're feeding Torah to people today. And as I said, it needs to be that way. I'm not suggesting that we go back to the old days, but there's an important value here. We need to understand the principle. The principle is, when you're fed Torah, it is of little value. When you've discovered Torah, it is of enormous value. And we should spend more time discovering than being fed. And that started to be my answer to the question that was troubling me, that there's a reason why I suppose I teach the way I was taught by my Rabbeim. Not to just give the bottom line, to make it simple, to tell you what I'm going to say it, and then tell you what I've said, but to take you through the process a little bit. How do we get there? What are the questions? What are the issues? What are the different sources we're curating in order to focus on this piece of Gemara and bring life to this piece of Gemara, and then apply it, so that in this very short time that we have together, you get a taste of the journey, not just of the bottom line. And we learn this from the way that Rabbi Chia bar Abba taught Abba Khalifa Kruyel. This is our method of teaching. And it's interesting, it's said in the name of the Briskerov, in fact, that the Briskerov, and I heard something similar from Meir Soloveitchik, the Briskerov used to say, he only wants to give shiurim to people who are excited to learn what he has to teach. And that's why he was so selective. And you could go to him, as would often happen with Reb Meir, and expect him just to sprout her. He was very selective. And he could just sit silently and not say anything, or he could say something light. But to really get him to share a deep insight, he had to be sure that you wanted to hear that you really were craving to hear the Torah that he had to share. Otherwise, the Briskerov said that he wasn't really interested. He apparently said one of the people he loves teaching most was Rav Shach. When Rav Shach used to learn with the Briskerov, because that Rav Shach was a person who craved the Torah, who wanted it, who needed it, who appreciated it, who valued it. So this idea of, I've got this pearl and I'm just going to give it to you and you're going to distribute it, it's going to lose all its value. I've sat on this all this time. But there's another part of it also beyond educating, beyond teaching. And that's even in the learning process. That Torah, like many things, not only Torah, you've got to think of as like this iceberg. That there's a little spitz on the top that you can see, and there's an enormous amount of mass under the water that you can't even see. What's important is, as a human being, that our private domain, what goes on inside us, is so much bigger and more complex and more nuanced than what we express outwardly. That's when you talk about a person having content, when his emotions or her emotions are deeper than the way they're expressed, when their knowledge and wisdom is much deeper than what they express. What they express is the outer manifestation, is the real outcome of it, is what gets expressed. But underpinning that, there's an enormous reservoir of content, of information, of wisdom, of feeling. And it seems that there are things that Rabbi Chia bar Abba kept for himself, because the moment you share it, that's not part of this under the surface iceberg. That's now part of the top of the surface iceberg. And he felt that having to share this with his Talmud actually deprived him of some of that reservoir of wisdom inside him. There's a Mרגלית טובה. That's sometimes a matmon is a matmon even before it's discovered. Treasure is treasure before it's discovered. Once it's discovered, it's no longer a matmon, isn't that right? It's no longer a hidden treasure. Now it's out. But while it's under the surface, it has a lot of power, even while it's under the surface. And that's what the Gemara is. There's just so much power under the surface that we have to uncover and we have to reveal. There's a piece which we won't have the chance to do. If anybody wants to do it with me on Shabbos, I'm happy to do so. But it just takes it much further. It's a beautiful piece by Reb Shlomo Gansfried. Reb Shlomo Gansfried wrote the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, but that was his least impressive work. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, as I bring in the footnote, he himself writes, was written for businessmen who have no time to learn and for children who have no knowledge. And that's who he wrote it for. There's nothing wrong with the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. It's just one has to understand what it's written for. It's not written as a substitute for learning halacha. But 20 years before he published the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, he wrote a Perush on Bava Batra. He also wrote the standard book for Sofrim, So Kesem HaSofrim, the inkwell of the Sofrim, and it's the Chasam Sofer said, any Sofer, that's the go-to Sofer. So Reb Shlomo Ganzfried was an enormous Talmud Chacham, and he goes into the question of why this sense of loss. Why does he use the word loss? What was he about to lose? And what was he trying to hold on to? What was he preventing from becoming discovered? He goes into that in some greater detail. But suffice it to say that we learn from here that it's not just about getting to the bottom line as quickly as possible. It's going through a bit of the process of unraveling, of discovering, because that's where the growth is. It doesn't make a difference to the Torah. The Torah is there whether you discover it or you don't. It makes a difference to us. If we discover, we grow. If we're fed, we accumulate. You accumulate information like when one can accumulate objects. But our purpose in learning Torah is not just to accumulate information, but to grow as B'nai Torah and as Talmidei Chachamim.